I really hope that Richie McCaw has gone into camp and said, you guys were brilliant last week against the Boks at Eden Park. You've set a standard. Now maintain it and get better. Rusty Erasmus, his coaching record, his winning percentage is worse than Scott Robertson's. Razor has won a high percentage of tests that he's coached. I think Johnny Wilkinson is an all-timer, but I don't think he's in the same stratosphere as Dan Carter. I think Dan Carter is alone. There is no one close to him.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lachlan Waugh, typically producing this show behind the glass. I'm in front of the glass today, sitting in the host seat. Actually, this week, next week, and the week after, Martin Devlin is on holiday, so producer Lachlan stepping up to the plate. Can he knock a few homers? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. We usually do a mailbag segment on a Friday. Just because Marty's away, I wasn't going to forget about you guys. So let's get to these. A lot of content on the show this week dedicated to the All Blacks and the Springboks, and why not? That is the focus of New Zealand sport, I think, at the moment. With a bit of Warriors, let's give the Warriors some love. They're in the finals, which is quite a rare occurrence, isn't it, in the NRL to see the Warriors in the finals. So even though I'm a Broncos fan, and I genuinely don't care if the Warriors win or lose, it's nice to see them in the finals. It's nice for New Zealand sport. I want to start off with this comment here. We had Murray Mixted on the show on Monday. By the way, there's hundreds of comments I could have thrown into this segment, and I had to trim them down. I've managed to trim it down into under 20. It was hard work. But this one here from Edward Cuttica on our Facebook page. Mixted, that's the smartest thing you have said so far. Parker to 8, Vai back to 6, Ardie at 7. That gives us 4 legitimate jumpers. South Africa were using that back throw. Okay, this is quite a long comment, but a lot of love to Murray Mixted's idea of having more height in the loose forward trio. I mean, I disagree. Then again, I'm just a fan who works in sports media. I don't have any qualification, really, when it comes to rugby, playing the sport or coaching the sport. So a bit of love there for Mix's take on more height in the loose forwards. This one's great because the person themselves, this is 88V, okay. 88-V-dot-dot-8. You can see the name. It's a little bit, But anyway, thank you for your comment, of course. Comment Corner right here. Well, you're on Comment Corner. Well done. How do we all feel about Wayne Smith having to come back into the All Blacks coaching staff? Was he brought in by NZR or was he requested by Razor and Co? Does it also mean that if we don't have him, we don't win? This is quite a long comment, as you can see. Thank you very much for the comment, though. 88 with a bunch of different characters there. I don't think Wayne Smith was brought in to sort of fix things. I think that test week at Eden Park leading up to it, and then actually at Eden Park, that was already circled on the calendar. That's at least what we were told. And Wayne Smith has an advisory role within New Zealand Rugby. He worked with the Black Ferns ahead of their World Cup, and I think he has a very loose kind of influence on our national teams. So it wasn't like he was brought in, I don't think. But it's a fair point, I mean, because the All Blacks played pretty damn well. They were very smart in how they approached that test match. So I do agree with you that. Does that then suggest that we need him when it comes to establishing better game plans? And how do we look without him? Because as smart as that win over the Springboks felt from the All Blacks and measured, the Argentina loss was the opposite. It was a dumb performance from the All Blacks. So it's a fair point you bring up. I don't exactly disagree with what you're saying there. His impact on the All Blacks has been bigger than McCaw in my view. This one from Mr. BG, and this is in relation to what we discussed on Wednesday. Ardie Savea, where does he rank in terms of the greatest All Blacks loose forwards? I just posed the question, curious to know where people rate him, because I think a lot of people in my age range are quick to put Ardie Savea in that top 5. I like to think I've got a bit more of an old school view. I like to respect the past and the people who laid the foundations and blazed the trails for players now. And so I was just curious to know where people really ranked him. John Day joined me in studio to talk about this, and John was very quick to put Ardie already in that top 5 loose forwards of all time. He didn't put Ardie in the top 5 All Blacks of the 21st century. I think, without a doubt, Richie McCaw is our greatest loose forward, so our greatest 6, 7 or 8. Obviously, he and Ardie are different players. And I have a lot of love for the intangibles of sport, for the work ethic, for the standards that you set, for a relentless ongoing nature of your work and your performance, and Richie McCaw, I think, encapsulated that perfectly. Ardie does as well, but I think Richie just had it on another level. So I do agree with this comment. Thank you, Mr. BG. Thank you for contributing, as always. This one from Gary Mack on the YouTube channel. Wow, Tony, brilliant analysis as always. This is Tony Johnson, who we had on Monday. Every Monday we have Tony, and It is just a pleasure having him on the podcast. I was thinking last week, how are they going to kill their kicking platform? His analysis makes a heap of sense. Yeah, I thought Tony broke that down brilliantly. I really did. And I was like you guys. I was just a fan sitting there listening behind the glass in the producing booth when Tony was in with Marty. We had him on a Zoom call. But the way he talked about it, I thought, geez, that makes sense. So he picked that apart brilliantly, I thought, Tony Johnson. This is back to the loose forward debate around Ardie Savea and where he ranks. There will never be another Richie McCaw. He stands alone as the best. I won't say there will never be another, because there could be another Richie McCaw. We probably said there's never going to be another, I don't know, Sir Michael Jones or Colin Meads. And as much as Richie's a different player, at least in terms of his greatness, he's up there with those two, arguably higher. So I won't say there will never be another one, but he stands alone as the best right now for sure. I thoroughly agree with you. This one from Peter the Pākehā, 2977. What a name, Peter the Pākehā. But yeah, I agree with you there in the sense that he stands alone as the best right now, Richie McCaw. If we're talking loose forwards and we're talking captains, I think Dan Carter's the greatest All Black, because I think he was the perfect mould of, again, the intangibles, but also his skill set. There's never been a first five, at least in my time watching rugby, and from as much research as I can do of the past before I was born, I don't think anyone is as great as Dan Carter. And I think for British people in the Northern Hemisphere, to suggest that Johnny Wilkinson is better than Dan Carter, I think is barbaric. Absolutely barbaric. I think Johnny Wilkinson is an all-timer, but I don't think he's in the same stratosphere as Dan Carter. I think Dan Carter is alone. There is no one close to him. There is an argument, I actually think, at least for his peak, of Beauden Barrett at his absolute best for those 2 or 3 years, 16, 17 and 18, those years before that 2019 World Cup. I think Beauden Barrett was unreal. But Dan Carter did it at that level and for longer, even though he did actually contend with injuries to Dan Carter. This one from Flying Squirrel 9420. I want to add one more point here that wasn't really mentioned. In the matches that McCaw didn't play for the All Blacks throughout his career, their winning percentage was about 5% lower. I don't know if that's actually true, but let's assume that stat's true. Then when he was on the field, I don't know the stats for Ardie, so I can't comment on that. He's not in my top 5 yet, but by the time he retires, he probably will be. Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you, Flying Squirrel. Great name again. The thing about Ardie Savea, I think it's a fair point. I think it's a bit harsh from one perspective, but it's also a fair point. He has lost 24 tests in the All Blacks jumper. So I think there's some value in suggesting, have his performances resulted in wins enough when you compare it to Richie? Richie won, I know that he won 97 out of his 110 as captain. I think out of his 148 that he played in total, Richie McCaw tests, he only lost 15. 15. I think the All Blacks have lost 15 tests in the last 3 or 4 years. And then in the 15 years of test rugby, 16 years if you want to be specific, Richie McCaw lost 15 tests. My gosh. This is again about the segment that I had on Wednesday with John Day talking about the loose forwards. John Day analysis is just perfect. This from Ed731. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, I thought John was awesome. I think John words things really well. And he's got such a crisp, clean voice. Like, I've got to work hard to sound good behind a mic. John is just natural. There was a lot of great comments actually yesterday about the All Blacks team naming. There's heaps of them, and a lot of them in regards to really liking the team. Just quickly here, this one from Uncle Jezza. I like Nigel. I like Nigel too. That's why I had him on. Nigel, he sounds like a kid talking about rugby. He's so excited about it, and he words things really, really well, Nigel. I actually really, really enjoy having him on the show. But yeah, a lot of comments in regards to Duplessis Kirifi. And I actually really like this, and I thank you guys for commenting this. Because Nigel made a point that Kirifi's form hasn't been great since going to Test rugby. And I think it's kind of true. And it's not being critical. It's not saying he's not a good player, that maybe he's actually just taken a little bit of time to adjust to Test rugby. And I want to focus on this one right here. Agree absolutely with Nigel about Duplessis Kirifi. This from Rob NZ6342. Thank you, Rob. I was pleased to see him make the All Blacks and be given a go, but the reality is he hasn't really been all that effective. I haven't seen his stats, but I don't remember seeing him get a single breakdown turnover in all the games, in all the game time he has been given. Yeah, I agree with you, and I haven't really seen it much either. So I'm curious to know what the numbers are. I don't think he's been bad, Duplessis Kirifi. I think I've said Kirifi, and I keep mispronouncing his surname. I think it's Kirifi, so apologies for that. But I I agree. I remember, I think it was the second test against France in Wellington. I think he got penalised a few times after coming off the bench. And he wasn't arguing with the ref, but he's really questioning the ref's calls. And there was a point in the first test against France as well that's burned in my memory of Karifi getting pushed out of the way at the breakdown pretty easily. So, look, he's a talented player. He's a real brilliant turnover, just machine. But we haven't really seen it yet in Test rugby. Let's give him some time for sure. I think we've got a bit of time. But yeah, I'd love to see him just get in there, lock his body in place, snatch the ball, and we go from there. This one here from Swapper Crate. What does that mean? Swapper Crate? I hope that's not a rude word because I've just read it out. After last year, wasn't sure about Razor. He was playing it safe, but loving Razor's selections this year, and hopefully the All Blacks come to the party on Saturday. Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. I think this is actually a really, really key test for the All Blacks, and I hope this is what Richie McCaw has. I was talking about this with a colleague downstairs just before. I really hope that Richie McCaw has gone into camp and said, "You guys were brilliant last week against the Boks at Eden Park. You've set a standard. Now maintain it and get better. Because I'm worried that we could just go, oh, sweet, we got a good win and we just relax a little bit. I think it's a real test of character if you can get that win, but then you build on it and you're just as good. Because that's what made the All Blacks so good in the 2010s. They set a standard and they maintained it for so long. And you knew that if they lost, like the way they did against England at Twickenham in 2012, they lost by 17 points and they were thoroughly outplayed. You sort of knew, okay, that's an off day because you knew that the All Blacks had a standard that they stuck to. But I agree with this. Swapper Crate. I agree with the fact that the selections, I just like them. I like the mixing and mingling. I like the working towards the World Cup with a bit of depth. I think as long as we win enough tests, then I don't really have a problem with that. If we start losing a lot, like if we lost to South Africa Eden Park, I'd be seriously asking some questions. Didn't Lachlan say last week that the box scrum in the second half will be an area of weakness that the All Blacks can exploit? This from RRD Bear. RRDE Bear. Yeah, I did. I thought so because I thought the All Blacks had a better front row coming off the bench. And I was wrong. Yeah, I'll put my hand up. The South African scrum was much better in the first half and they got even better in the second half. So De Groot and Newell at least performed far better than Tamaiti Williams and Taurua Lomax. So, yeah, you're right. You've called me out. Fair enough. I got that wrong. So, thank you for your comment. Listening in, I'm currently frustrated with the way Rassie and the Boks are going. This one from Andrew Tulloch. This was in regards to the Filisande Sakaba interview from Tuesday. We talked about Rassie Erasmus's team for the second test in Wellington. Perhaps I've become so used to them winning, the Springboks. Perhaps in listening into JS, John Smith. Actually, this could be part of the John Smith interview. My apologies. We need a little patience and trust the process to gear up for 2027. I just don't like the idea of playing Rugby World Cup to Rugby World Cup. Actually, no, this one was on the Filisande one. So this person's Andrew's obviously watched the John Smith one as well. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, look, I think with the Springboks, you've got to remember that outside the World Cups, the last two that they've won, they haven't been world beaters. They haven't set the same standard as the All Blacks in terms of winning every single test. A telling point of all of that, Rassie Erasmus, his coaching record, his winning percentage is worse than Scott Robertson's. Razor has won a high percentage of tests that he's coached. Now, Rassie wasn't the coach from 2020 to 2023, the head coach technically. But yeah, I don't think they've always been really hell-bent on winning every single test outside of those World Cups under Rassie Erasmus, have the Springboks. So I get what you're saying, Andrew. But I can understand the frustration, but I don't think it's too dissimilar to what's been going on. But no, it's a fair point you bring up because I'm not going to argue with how it makes you feel. I mean, fans feel certain ways, and you can't ever really tell a fan how they should or shouldn't feel, particularly if they've been supporting that team or those teams that they love for as long as they have. And maybe it's a generational thing. Their parents, their grandparents, and whatnot have supported those teams. So I'll never tell you that you're wrong as a fan. So thank you for your comment, Andrew. Last couple here. This one from Albert Mackey 5021. Hey Marty, can't believe you're taking a break just when the fire in the Silver Ferns kitchen across all codes is at its greatest. Young bloke doing a great job. Thank you very much. See you soon. Yeah, the Silver Ferns. Woo. Dame Noeline Taurua being dismissed as coach temporarily. I don't think she's officially gone, but she's not going to be coaching this team during the Tiny Jameson series, which is coming up against South Africa. Yeah, players aren't happy with her tactics. I don't think Netball New Zealand has really been that well run over the last year or so when you look at some of the stories that have come out around broadcasting deals, player eligibility, and now this, and the fact that Dame Noeline Taurua has won us a World Cup. Yeah, she's a bit of a hard ass, but you need to be a hard ass as a coach, don't you? You need to get the best out of your players. This is high performance sport. So, look, in saying all of that, I don't know all the details around what's really happened. I haven't done a huge amount of research, so those comments could be a bit short-sighted. I could be ignoring a lot of the players and their well-being, so apologies if so. But from what I know, I think that's a poor move from Netball New Zealand to sort of side with the players when you look at who your coach is, the standards that she sets. But those standards lead to World Cup wins.
DSPN.